You're listening to the Jets Factor on SoundCloud.com and the Grandstand Sports Network.
Third down snap. Sanchez to the end zone over Arrington, and touchdown, New York, Centennial Holmes.
Now, here's your host, CJ DeSimone.
What is going on, Jets Nation? Welcome to another edition of the Jets Factor podcast here on SoundCloud.com and the Sportsmore Radio Network. I'm your host, CJ the Painkiller DeSimone. I've got two very special guests joining me. I want to introduce them. First off, my wingman who's been helping me out a lot this season. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Mr. Kevin Jackson, otherwise known as Spotty Blackman. Kevin, it's good to have you back. How are you?
Yes, CJ. Tonight's a great night. Thank you again for having me. I appreciate it. You know, it's always good to be on with you. Got a great show lined up. Obviously, I'm excited not only about being here with you in particular, but also about the guests that we have on. Today's a good day. We got to win. Let's talk about it.
You bet. And also another very special guest who is joining me live. He is one of the four horsemen from the Live Browns podcast on Facebook. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Mr. Kevin Robbins. Kevin, thank you again for taking some time out to join me tonight. How are you, my friend?
Outstanding. We got the holiday season around the corner and a Jets victory heading into that holiday. Can't ask for much more.
You bet. Speaking of this Jets victory, the New York Jets getting a very improbable victory, probably in my opinion one of the bigger upsets of this season, 16-10 over the Pittsburgh Steelers, that really needed this win in order to stay in control of their own destiny for the NFL playoffs. And the New York Jets definitely having an impact now on the NFL playoff picture in regards to the Pittsburgh Steelers. This game was probably as much of a meat grinder game as Mr. Robbins would like to say, as anything. You know, I had an opportunity to jump on their show this past Friday, and this was a hot-button topic of conversation in which can the Jets be competitive, and do the Jets really have a chance against, you know, the Pittsburgh Steelers, who tout the number 4 overall defense. Kevin Robbins, I'm going to start with you on this one. So, what were your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, I think, I had a lot of thoughts, obviously. Really proud of how the Jets showed up and performed, and not necessarily in the total outputs or yardage or statistics or anything like that. I think that you had a team coming in that if they won out, made the playoffs, this game was everything to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Jets have kind of been out of the playoff hunt for a couple weeks. And one of the things that you look for in this type of game are other players mailing it in. Are they not taking this serious? Are they excited about the offseason? Are they not structured? Are they not organized? Are they not playing with the same level of intensity as the team that needs to win to make it to the playoffs? And the Jets showed up today. And the offense outscored their offense, and the defense gave up less points than their defense. And both sides of the ball, we outperformed a likely Hall of Fame head coach, the number 4 defense, and an offense that's at least been good enough to put up over 20 on teams like San Francisco and Seattle. And the Jets showed up and beat them today. Like, however you want to cut it, however you want to give credit across the team, if you only want to give Greg Williams credit or you don't want to give Adam Gase any credit, they lined up and did something that other teams haven't been able to do against this caliber team, and they didn't need to. The game meant nothing to them. They showed up and beat the team that this game meant everything to them. And that tells me a lot about the team, the coaching, and the fight that's still left in the players wearing the green and white uniforms today.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And you know, just real quick, Sam Darnold really did not have one of his stellar days, but, he was efficient enough except for the sack strip fumble. Basically, Sam Darnold finishes the day 16 of 26 for 183 yards, 1 touchdown, no picks. Did have a sack strip fumble in which the Pittsburgh Steelers were able to quickly convert into a touchdown thanks to Bless Austin, just a blown assignment And he ended up getting benched for the second half of the game. And Greg Williams made no bones about it, as you saw him on the sideline really giving him the business about that blown assignment. So, Jax, I wanted to swing over to you. What was your thoughts on this game?
Good win. Again, kinda. I'm glad we win. It's always good to win a game. And again, to Kevin's point, we had we beat a Steelers team coming in at 8-6. With an opportunity, as he stated, to really position themselves, in a spot where, they have an opportunity going into the playoffs, and that's really all that you need. Once you get in, you just have the opportunity. Any game, any situation, you never know what's going to happen. And we saw today, even with the shuffling in quarterbacks that the Steelers did. We were just able to grind it out. We were able to be, at least efficient enough to score more points than a team that actually should have beaten us handily. And, there are some positives to be taken away from this. Obviously, we look at this and we, see a team that we should have lost this game, just looking at the levels not only of talent but of coaching and of being in situations like this. And we're not a team who has, and we're not a team who is known for, being in situations like this and finding ways to win. We find ways to lose these games, over the course of the past few seasons. So, in that we take away some positives. It was a good win for us, but we didn't look good in certain respects. And again, to Kevin's point, I think you guys kind of set this off, very well to start off the discussion. We have some things going forward, and I think Jamal Adams maybe summed it up in one of his post-game recaps where he says, we're really not that far away. I mean, it does look like we've got glaring holes and glaring needs and all of these things, but even, slightly more functional play than what it is that we've gotten, and it puts us in a position to win some of the games that we have. I guess the schedule is going to be coming out here soon. We're going to see how that bodes, for what it is that we look like next season. But this win in particular, some positives, some negatives. I'm sitting on the fence on this. Just showed the draft update. We're now going to be drafting, I believe, in 10th position, just based on the way that things have shuffled out so far. And, we've got some things. I don't know. I'm just kind of on the fence on this one. I'm glad that we win. I always want us to win. Every week I look forward to us being able to win games. This game just shows so many of the things that are really going to create difficulty for us when we face teams who are in this situation, who don't have some of the the injury concerns, some of the player personnel concerns that we faced in a team today. Even though we came out and we won, we kind of didn't look good doing it, and we're not going to be able to scrape these games out continuously if we don't play better than what it is that we have. It's just a hard game. It really is just a hard game for me.
Yeah, I can agree with you on a lot of the points that you just made. I mean, this is a game where you still say that, the Jets didn't look pretty winning this game, but you're still happy that they won this game, but you still see some glaring issues on this team that need to be cleaned up. And, I do have to say, they really made life miserable for the Pittsburgh offense. And I think Kevin Robbins remembers on the Live Browns podcast that I made a statement that I felt like this was really going to be a defensive type of game. This was going to be one of those grind-out games where, you have two good, solid defenses, and whoever had the ability to establish the ground game was going to be the one that was going to be able to be victorious in this game. And, if you take a look at the Pittsburgh quarterbacking situation, wow, Mason Rudolph ended up having to come in for Devlin Hodges. Hodges went 11 for 17 for 84 yards. He actually had to come back in the fourth quarter after Mason Rudolph was injured. He had 2 picks on the day. Mason Rudolph actually finished the day 14 of 20 for 129 yards and a touchdown. His only touchdown coming at the end of the first half on a blown assignment by Bless Austin. But yeah, I really felt, honestly, that I was worried about Juju Smith-Schuster. I was really worried about James Washington. James Washington did finish the day, 5 receptions for 41 yards. Juju finished it for 2 receptions for 22 yards. Very quiet day for him. Deontay Johnson was really the guy of the day, 8 receptions for 81 yards. So on a positive note, the New York Jets, again, holding said opponent to under 100 yards receiving. They did not have a 100 yards receiving wide receiver against them, and also for rushing as well too. I mean, James Conner left this game with a calf injury. Kerrith White, 6 carries for 22 yards. Benny Snell, 7 carries for 14 yards. Jalen Samuels, 3 carries for 7 yards. Basically, I really did not see, a total as a team. They rushed for 75 yards. So, I mean, the New York Jets defense did its job. And you know what? I got to give some credit to Adam Gase because you know what? He had a tough challenge ahead of him today, having to navigate how he was going to attack this Pittsburgh defense. And they went right after them, especially, on the 32-yard touchdown pass to Robbie Anderson to start off the scoring in the first quarter. Sam Darnold made a completely ridiculous throw where he threaded the needle in between 2 defenders, probably 2 of the better defenders on the Pittsburgh Steelers, and Robbie Anderson just made a complete phenomenal catch. So, for pretty much their entire offense for the day, I mean, the Jets exploited the Steelers when they needed to, and they got the points when they needed to. So, and even Sam Ficken converted 3 field goals today. He contributed 9 points. So, I mean, special teams did what they needed to do. So,
I tweeted this out earlier about Berrios, just on the point about special teams and how he's been as impressive a pickup as maybe we've had so far in what it is that he's been able to do with his few touches, but. We noticed something in our defense, and I think that is going to be something that is going to be really important for us. There are obviously fewer needs on the defense than what it is that we have on offense at this point. But you were spot on saying that this is going to be a defensive game because really it just kind of showed. Even the past few weeks talking about how Marcus May hasn't really played up to certain standards, and then today. Him having a monster game, including towards the end, is horrible.
He made a ridiculous play in the fourth quarter, completely robbing, I think it was James Washington in the end zone, where he just went, and I think it was either him or Deontay Johnson, but they basically had the ball caught in the end zone. And Marcus May just gets his left hand in there and just rips that ball out in midair. No regard, nothing. That was a tremendous play. And he had a ridiculous interception where he looked like a wide receiver in the end zone over there, toe-tapping to make that catch, jumping in front of the receiver to make that pick in the end zone. It was beautiful. I mean, Marcus May showed why he is a very good Robin to Jamal Adams being Batman. And the New York Jets, in my opinion, need to do everything in their power to make sure that Jamal Adams stays a New York Jet for life and that Marcus May continues to back up Jamal Adams so we could have the best 1-2 safety tandem in the NFL. That's just my opinion. So, Kevin Robbins, jump into this conversation over here. Any points to add after all of this banter between myself and Jax here?
No, I think you and Jackson brought up a good point. And I think you caveated on it well about, like, the level of talent, right? Like, I think we all know the Steelers came into this game without their quarterback. They haven't had their quarterback practically since week 1. But when you look at what Adam Gase, as well as Greg Williams, had the game plan against, right? I mean, the Steelers got 2 Pro Bowl offensive tackles. I mean, just the names. And just shows you how poor we've been drafted when I start saying these names, right? The Watt, right? The Bud Dupree, the Devin Bush, the Cameron Haywards, right? Those are all homegrown, like, talents. Those are all drafted players that are key pieces of their number 4, like, overall defense, right? Like, those are Pro Bowl locks every year, count on it, like, studs, right? Watt's going to be up for Defensive Player of the Year, right? And who do we put up in front of them to block them today? Who do we, like the Three Stooges and a couple. like 4 of them aren't going to be on the team next year probably. At least 3. At least 3 aren't going to be on the team. Probably 4 will be. And they just went up against Watt, Dupree, and Hayward, who needed the win to make the playoffs, and we won. You know, like, and I would say, you even said on the other side of the ball when you're talking about Connors and Juju. Do we have a Juju? I'm just checking. Do we have a Juju? Like,
no, we don't.
Nothing against Robbie, but he's not Juju. Like, Robbie might be a Washington, but they have a number 1 and number 2 legit drafted wide receivers, right? Like, that's as close to a complete team on paper, and I didn't even bring up Minka. Up Minka. Like, I don't need to bring up Minka, because when they made a trade, they got this second-year stud. Like, of course you make a trade for that, just like you make a trade for Tunsil. Like, a left tackle, you can argue what you gave up for it, but now you have a legit cornerstone. They have a legit cornerstone DB. Like, across the field, you can, like, put little, I wish we did this better. I wish we didn't have business being on the field, like with them, in a lot of ways, especially with what we saw. And on live rounds, I pointed out, if Atkins and Dunlap did to our offensive line what they did that game, which was dominate the entire game, we can say we could have schemed better, we could have done this better, but they dominated who was in front of them. Now, we could have tried to do something to dance around the domination, but they dominated, period, end of story. We just went against Hayward, Watt, and Dupree, who I would trade Atkins and Dunlap for. Like, I would take those 3 on any roster right now. So I expected some issues. Honestly, this game worried me going in because I was just worried that we were going to get 50 million hold calls. We had 7 offensive hold calls and 1 block in the back in that Cincinnati Bengals game, just on our offensive line. 8 penalties. I looked at that lineup I just told you, those 3 names, without saying the name Devin Bush, who's pretty good in his own right, and said Watt, Dupree, and Hayward. We had Connor McDermott starting on the offensive line this week.
Yep.
Connor McDermott. Like, I don't know if you guys knew that name before today, but the only reason you know it now is, and we're even talking about him, is because I just said Connor McDermott had to block Cameron Hayward today. Yeah. Like, that was just, I don't care how we got the win. Like, I don't care who we're going to give credit on the coaching staff for finding a way. When I just said our corners, which from the preseason I could have looked at our corners and been like, we're in trouble. Just had to cover Washington and Juju. Mm-hmm. And we won, you know. The other thing I want to give credit for is Bilal Powell, not to cut you off, but Bilal Powell 2 weeks ago literally showed Le'Veon, this is how you're supposed to run behind the offensive line. Yeah. Like, this is how, just plant old Thomas Jones style, 1 step and go every time. Plant and go. No fancy, no cutbacks, no plant and go. And Le'Veon has been a totally different running back since that one game where we finally had a running back go over 70 yards. I have to give Gase credit for finally giving him the ball 20 times, 2 weeks in a row, to kind of give some value to that $14 million we're spending on the running back. Definitely been impressed with a semblance of a run game.
Absolutely. You know, to that point, Le'Veon, who I mean, if you kind of discount the 11-yard loss, would have basically run for about 90 yards today. It wasn't, you know, obviously spectacular by his own standards, I'm sure, but it definitely shows that you know, there's been some progress made in that. So, you know, I'm really excited about that. We talk about you know, being able to kind of compare. Would we be able to compare Robbie and say a Jamison Crowder to Juju and whoever, you know, Washington or Deontay or I mean, how would that really fare if we were talking about an improvement in the offensive line and giving Sam some time and opportunities to kind of make some things work? Also, If we add, our stellar tight end who we lost for the season, in Chris Herndon, if we add him to the mix, how different does this offense really look with the improvements to the offensive line that we're going to need to make? So, again, Kevin's kind of changing my mind a little bit about this victory, and I came into it, really kind of just, not really happy. I mean, I had, maybe some expectations coming into the season, and I thought we underperformed, and I think there are, quite a few reasons for that, and we've talked about them individually. But, at this point in time, I want to maybe start looking at where it is that we're going, just going forward. And this next game against Buffalo is going to show some things, because we have an opportunity to, again, finish 7-9, best record we've had since Six Picks Trap was here doing whatever voodoo he did. And it does kind of give us, a high note to kind of end the season on. And then going into next season, to Jamal Adams' point, we're really not that far away if we have some smart additions. And Joe Douglas is known for his additions on the offensive line. If that is going to be his contribution to the team, then that's where we most need it. Now, some of the other positions, and this, I don't want to get too far off on a tangent on this, but even some of the Eagles fans that I've interacted with will tell you that maybe outside of the offensive line, some of the other additions that he's made haven't been great. But the draft is a crapshoot, and at this point, we don't have very many things that are really team or season-making additions or subtractions, I guess, at this point. But, be able to see what Joe Douglas is going to do with the offensive line, and then maybe a few pieces here and there, I think, it's going to give us an opportunity to really see how the direction of this team can change going forward into next season and beyond. But, a game like this is again, it maybe leaves more questions. Is Le'Veon even going to be here next season? I mean, that has been too prevalent of a conversation on Twitter and in the media over the course of these past few weeks. But we know what's possible if we can kind of, maybe just bolster some of the things that we have really perennially had problems with, and that's, the hogs in the trenches.
Well, hey, I want to actually throw some numbers out there at you, because this is the kind of guy I am. First half of the season, the New York Jets went 1-7. The second half of the season, the New York Jets are 5-2. Okay, so now look, we could sit here and we could poo-poo on the win, say the Giants are trash, the Redskins are trash, the Dolphins are trash or whatever. But you know what? Look, you play who's on your schedule, okay? And to me, I'm really thinking that things are starting to come together, because we're starting to see a little bit more cohesiveness over this second half of the season. And mind you, the injuries have been piling up, and regardless of the injuries piling up, the Jets are 5-2 in their last 7 games, okay? 5-2. Let that sink in, okay? Whereas if we didn't have as many injuries on the ball, and if Sam didn't really get mono at the beginning of the season, our record could be probably different than what it is right now. And sure, we're gonna, one of the biggest tasks that the New York Jets are going to have facing them next week is to have the first season where they do not have double-digit losses, over the past few years, which unfortunately, has always plagued the New York Jets. But they're going into Buffalo with an opportunity to be able to avert double-digit losses in a season for the first time since, hell, I can't even remember. So, there's no doubt that this team is showing signs of improvement, and it may not be as consistent as we would like it, but the improvement is still there.
It's there. It is.
So I wanted to get your thoughts on this. Do you think the Jets are starting to turn the corner? And what does that mean? And if they are, or what does that mean for the offseason? Kevin Robbins, I'm going to start with you, then we're going to circle around to Jackson, and I will take up the rear.
Yeah, I think a couple things, and there's so many great points that's been made. I mean, Kevin talked about the expectations before the season, and I can't speak to all, like, Jets fans' expectations before the season. But, you know, I saw them as a fringe, like, playoff team. Like, I saw them somewhere between 7 and 9 wins is what I kind of thought going into the offensive line and DB was too much of a concern for it not to be for me. And the beginning of the schedule, whether Sam got hurt or not, was pretty brutal. So you'd have to have some momentum in the second half of the year. And I think the teams, the Jets, and I'm not saying you shouldn't be frustrated with Gase on a lot of levels, right? Like if we beat the Bills, we could finish 7 and 9, and then you're really going to look at the first Bills game, the 0-7 Dolphins game, and the Bengals game, and say, you know, what could this team have really been, even with the Sam injuries? Even if you pull out that first Bills game and win that Bengals and Dolphins game, you're probably this is pretty close to a 10-win team, like pretty close. And that's probably what Sam's point was. But then you also look at them and say, well, you beat Dallas, you beat Oakland, you beat Pittsburgh, who are fringe playoff teams, which goes back to what my expectation was before the season started, right? Like, I thought they were a fringe playoff team. They're better than a lot of other fringe playoff teams, but like a fringe playoff team, they win some games maybe they shouldn't and lose some games that they probably shouldn't. So, I don't know, this Bills game, I agree with Kevin when he said that's going to tell me a lot. Because to me, I don't care what the Bills' record is. I put them right there in the Tier 2, like bottom of Tier 2 probably, teams in the AFC. And we're trying to push our way to the top of Tier 3 to kind of cut our gums into, like, that bottom of Tier 2. And this year with injuries, we couldn't get there. And I look at next year and say, hopefully this Bills game we put on a good show. And I really hope that we do. And I want to win. Like I said before the Steelers game, I want to win the last two, which would send a message to our direction. Getting that 7th win, I think, would be big for us. That would be 7-2, or 6-2 in the last 8, which would be like huge. And then really the Jets are going to have some super huge tough decisions to make, right? We probably need a center, 2 tackles, 1 to 2 guards, 1 to 2 corners, a pass rushing outside linebacker, and you can't do that with just our draft picks and cap space. So whatever we do with Le'Veon and Jamal, I would like to keep them. I don't know. It's going to be tough for the Jets to decide with all those holes to not move on. So I think the Jets are right about where we thought they were. We just thought they would be closer, like 8 or 9 wins maybe to push into the playoff spot.
Right.
But I think we're a fringe. Like, we're right there. Like, I think we're right there just behind Buffalo, who spent wisely on offensive line in the offseason versus us, right? Mitch Morris, Spain, drafting Ford. They literally went all O-line in the offseason, right? Not all sexy skill positions like we did. They went all O-line and all the big uglies. And I think that's what Douglas is going to do, and I think that's what we gotta hope for and see, like, how it plays out.
I guess I'm basically just going to be a continuation of Kev because most of the points that he made were really right in step with where it is that I feel like we are. I said a couple of weeks ago that there was really kind of these next few games. I think we were talking about this before, actually right after the Cincinnati game, we were talking about how these next few games were really going to shape maybe our idea of the direction of the team at this point. And again, because I think we did talk about this, at the beginning of the season, I was thinking, 8-9 wins also. I was thinking that if things shook out, and maybe we won a game that we were, maybe right on the cusp of previously, that we could end up maybe being a 10-win team. And the entire conversation around this team is completely different. It's so much transformation, if we have 10 wins coming into this game or coming out of this game, even beyond that. And this next game against Buffalo is going to be really important because it's just going to show the cohesion, the faith, I guess, in each other that the players on this team have, and to a certain extent, maybe even, how much they believe in their coaching staff, and to not just kind of cave like we saw the team do under Rex those last few seasons right before we ended up moving on from him. And we all know that everybody on the team, including me, who's not even a Jets player, I would have run through a wall for Rex. At certain points, I love the guy. But have we turned the corner? We haven't turned the corner, but we're definitely leaning. We got that lean like we're getting ready to slingshot around. So these next few months, and we'll see how it shakes out. Some of the moves that will be made, after the end of the season, where we kind of get rid of some players that, we're going to need to move on from, and going to give them an opportunity to kind of find some different homes or different opportunities, and maybe, even some news about who it is that we're able to speak to, and what direction it is that we're going in with, who it is that we add via free agency, and some of the guys that we bring in before the draft. So let's get our O-line rankings ready. Let's get some cornerback rankings ready. Let's kind of, position ourselves right now to maybe not be overwhelmed by the additions, but to look and see overall how they fit into the scheme and what kind of, brick and mortar pieces Douglas is going to bring in. I think we do have a great opportunity coming into the next season to really look a little bit more like maybe a more of a solid fringe playoff team, if I'm just going to use the words that Kev was using, because right. I kind of think that they're really close, because we are in the fringe. I mean, a couple of things go our way and we're in, a couple of things don't and we're out. And some of the injuries that we've had this season could maybe overcome some of the difficulties that we've had in coaching. You kind of, talent is what it is. If you've got, upper echelon, higher caliber players, and, maybe coaching isn't as impactful in certain situations, but, we're not there yet. So let's see if we can put ourselves in a position where, something like that is possible for us.
Gotcha.
Next season, 9 or 10 wins. If we're not in that vicinity, then it was most definitely a wasted season. That's just where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I think that, the Jets, in regards to turning the corner, they're not being as consistent as I would like them to be. But nevertheless, one of the things that I'm noticing, you're not seeing any you're not seeing any lack of fight with this team. Okay, and despite their struggles, they're still going out there and they're going toe to toe. And what really showed that to me was, believe it or not just this Pittsburgh win today, but also last week against the Baltimore Ravens, where you really thought that there was the potential that the Jets were going to be embarrassed on national TV again, and that really wasn't the case. The Jets put up a good fight in the first half and started off the second half with some good fight, and then unfortunately, Baltimore just got the better of them and then just ran away with that game. But again, you did not see any quit from anyone on that sideline. They still went in. They were still fighting. Adam Gase was still attacking. Sam Darnold was still attacking. And it's difficult for me to give Adam Gase credit for anything, because of how I feel about that entire Jets coaching situation. But you have to give credit where credit is due. And, Gase has had these guys prepared despite all of these rumors and leaks and stories coming out that Gase has lost the respect of the locker room. It shouldn't look like it today, because this would be the type of game against the Pittsburgh Steelers, a team that's fighting for a playoff spot, for the Jets to completely mail it in, and they didn't do that. So they went out there and they gave the Steelers all that they could handle and then some. So, and they were able to come out with the win. So, I'm starting to find folly a little bit in those stories that are coming out about a fractured locker room, and Gase wants nothing to do with the defense, and the players are sick of Adam Gase, because it certainly didn't look like it today. So now, as far as expectations for the offseason, Jax, I'm going to start with you, then we're going to circle around to Kevin Robbins, and then obviously I'll finish it up as we're starting to come against it here. what do you guys expect Joe Douglas to be his biggest priority? I know it totally didn't come out right, but what do you expect Joe Douglas's biggest priority in the offseason to be besides offensive line? There we go. That's what I wanted to say. Okay.
Okay. Well, yeah, no, that's a great question, because I'll be honest with you. The caveat about it not being offensive line, I think he's probably got a singular focus at this point, that if he doesn't deal with that in particular, then almost anything else that he does is going to be minimized in its impact overall. So let's just drop that in there. But you know what? Pass rusher and cornerback, and I mean, I don't know if that's interchangeable. I'm not necessarily sure what the talent's going to look like in either pool, whether it be draft or free agency. I know there's going to be some names that'll be available, but those two positions in particular are really and have been, just like with offensive line, they've been some of the things that have plagued us. It's caused us serious difficulty. So those two positions in particular need to be 1A. Going forward, and I think that the situation with Bless Austin today is kind of a microcosm of why it is as important as it is, because I thought when we drafted Bless Austin, I thought the kid had an opportunity to really be kind of decent. You know, I thought he'd end up being a guy that we could count on to be a name to step up and maybe show that he could play after the injury, and he came in and he did exactly that. But today, I think Greg Williams had to kind of rein him in a little bit. I think these past few weeks, I know it's been a lot of really positive coverage, and he hasn't really performed up to that, at least in this game today. And I think there's Mollett, who is another guy that plays well in spots, but also has hiccups now and again. That kind of again just kind of solidified that we really aren't set at that position. But those two positions most definitely need to be it. Us not having a pass rusher is really, exacerbating that issue with us not having the guys on the outside. But even when these guys on the outside have been playing well, the lack of pass rush still actually creates some difficulties for us. And maybe it limits really, as good as we've been, it limits really how good we actually can be. So with those two additions, I think the focus on the offensive line is obviously going to be the only one that really matters beyond that. But those two in particular need to be addressed, and they need to be addressed, with as much seriousness as with the offensive line.
All right, Mr. Robbins, you're up.
Draft capital, if I was going to go something after offensive line that he needs more draft picks.
Great.
I mean, honestly, I don't know if Douglas is like Joe Douglas or if he's Noah from the Bible, because we need two of everything. Of everything. I need 2 corners. I need 2 outside linebackers. I probably need 2 tackles, 2 guards. I need a center. And Harrison's been great, but then we're going to need a solid backup center. I don't know if I need 1 or 2 running backs. I don't have a backup quarterback that I trust right now. I could look at wide receiver, and Quincy's probably not going to be back. There's some cap savings if we let him go, the way the capital. And Robbie Anderson's a free agent. So I might need 2 wide receivers, or I got to re-sign 1, and I still need another one. Neville's a free agent. Burris is a free agent. Do we keep Bless Austin and Mollett to compete for number 2 and go grab a number 1? Poole is a free agent, one of the best nickelbacks in football. Poole's a free agent. So I might have to sign one and go get another number 1. I need 2 corners. So, part of me when I hear Jets fans say there's no way you can give up Jamal, there's no way you can give up Le'Veon. Well, the top safety in the NFL makes $15 million a year. So Jamal Adams will probably make $17 to $18 million a year to play strong safety. So Joe Douglas has to decide, do we pay borderline quarterback money to a strong safety? And I love Jamal Adams. But are we ready to play quarterback money or borderline quarterback money for strong safety when you need 4 offensive linemen, 2 cornerbacks, 2 wide receivers, maybe a running back if you trade Le'Veon Bell. So there's tough decisions here that, to a fan, it's very easy to be like, you never give up Ronnie Lott. And maybe you don't. Maybe you do lock up Ronnie Lott, but just know you can't bitch later that he can't sign a left tackle, right? Or a number 1 receiver or a number 1 corner. Do you want a left tackle, a number 1 pass rusher, a number 1 cornerback, or do you want a strong safety? And that's what Joe Douglas gets paid the big bucks and got a 6-year deal to figure out. So you can bitch about it all day online.
Yeah.
But that's a real man's decision that he has to make. And same thing with Le'Veon, right? Chubb is rookie running back, rookie salary, and we're paying Le'Veon $14 million a year. So if you could get a first-round pick, you can find a Chubb later on. But he's not going to quite be Le'Veon, maybe. But there's some tough decisions coming in the offseason. I don't think it's a roster that just flips over like we think. Joe Douglas needs a lot, and I think we're going to see a lot of changes. And I think that's one of the reasons the Johnsons hung on to Gase is because, well, we kind of got to see how him and Douglas work together, and we got 0 off seasons of that so far. Yeah. So I think we got to at least get one to see how the two work together, because we kind of hired Douglas because everybody said they work well together, and we got to have 1 off season of that. So I think Jets fans, you're still going to have like the monkeys in the barrel, and we're still going to shake them up. And we don't know where they're going to fall. We don't know where the players – I don't think we know what this roster is going to look like next year. I think we're going to trade down finally like we thought with Mac. We always thought Mac was picking number 6 every freaking year. And we're like, hey, we've known we needed all these holes for a long, long time, right? Yeah. And we never traded down. We never did. We traded up once, but we never traded down. And to me, Douglas is going to have to look at that number 10 pick, like Kevin said earlier, and say, if I need 2 guards and a right tackle and a left tackle and a backup center, can I afford to stay at 10 and take, the wide receiver from Oklahoma or the wide receiver from Bama or the number 2 tackle? Like, I'm going to have to trade down and get a bunch of these guys. Yeah. So, I don't know. I think a lot of movement. I expect a lot of movements, a lot more draft capital. And a lot of moves to try to get us, better positioned. Because I just pointed out how the Steelers did it, right? All the names were drafted, all of them except Minka.
Right.
So I think looking at this roster, just like you kind of look at the Eagles roster, just like you kind of look at some of these other – even Dallas, who didn't make the playoffs, with that stud offensive line they got, they drafted all those guys. The Bills, drafted Ford, they built around some guys. Right. So I think the Jets got some tough decisions to make this offseason. I really do. And I'll be interested to see how Douglas, how things shake out, And he screams Yahtzee going into the preseason. Let's see how, this plays out.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great point, Kev. Great point.
It's definitely going to be an interesting offseason for the New York Jets. So, we still got 1 game to go, which is the Buffalo Bills, which we're hoping we get a good output for the season finale up in Orchard Park. So it still remains to be seen, but they still got 1 more game to go. So very interesting to see how that will play out. So, all right, gentlemen, we are just about at the end of it. So we're going to go around the room. Please give out your social media information where fans of the Jets Factor podcast can follow you. Jax, we're going to start with you. We'll circle around to Kevin Robbins, and then I will finish it up.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't already know, I'm your boy, Spotty Blackman, S-P-O-T-T-Y, Blackman, M-A-N. Holla at your boy. We're getting ready to come into the off season. It's going to be silly season like it always is. But I always think that, there are some really positive things that are going to come out of it. So I'm looking forward. I hope everybody out there, the fans, other followers of the team, other followers of the podcast in particular. CJ and I are going to be working together quite a bit going forward, so I'm really excited about that. But, yeah, hit me up on Facebook. We'll chop it up. I love talking about the team. It's always fun. differing opinions are always good also, because I think that it's really important to see things from different perspectives. Who knows? I might change your mind. You might change mine. We never can tell. But holler at me. Let's go.
Alrighty, Mr. Robbins, you are up.
Yeah, I can't be as extravagant as Mr. Jackson over there. So just live rounds on Facebook. Not quite as slick, not quite as savvy. But live rounds on Facebook. We got a podcast. We try to go every Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. But keep track of our schedule. We have a terrific lineup of guests. I'm going to try to talk Kevin Jackson and join us one week. CJ's been on, Fireman Ed, Scott Mullery. We get a pretty good list of guests with my amazing co-hosts on there, Euros, Mike Thomas, and El Chapo, Edward Delgado. Definitely love all the opinions that we hear, all the comments we read online. And we try to give opinions from both those that have season tickets or in the stands, those who travel on the road, as well as those that are admins on social media, and kind of keep a pulse of Jets Nation across the board. And some level of sanity we try to bring to our show, but not a consistent level of sanity, I promise. But anyways, thank you so much, CJ, for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
You bet, Kevin. It's always a pleasure having you on. And, of course, ladies and gentlemen, I'm CJ, the Painkiller DeSimone, and I am the host of the Jets Factor podcast here on SoundCloud.com and Sports War Radio Network. You can follow the show on Twitter at CNC Jets Factor. You can follow me at JetsFan0523. Shoot the show an email, thejetsfactor@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook, on Google Play. You can also find us on our home base, SoundCloud.com, and Sports War Radio, www.spreaker.com/Sports War Radio. Also, a very special shout-out to the Jets Factor podcast official sponsor, StatementGames.com, as they will be working with us moving forward. And as I broke the news last week on the last episode of the Jets Factor podcast, yes, we've got 2 more episodes to go. 2 more. Buffalo Bills postgame, and then our 2019 year in review, and then the Jets Factor podcast will be going off the air. So, ladies and gentlemen, be sure to follow us. Be sure to interact with us, as we want to try to give you guys the best content that we possibly can to finish off this season. And then myself and Spotty Blackman will be going on a new endeavor, hopefully kicking off just before the new NFL calendar year. Can't wait to reveal everything to you guys, which I probably will reveal during the final episode of the Jets Factor podcast. So, again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time out to listen to us, to download, to subscribe, to interact with us. Man, I can't thank you enough. This has just been a wild ride, and I can't wait for it to get better. So, as we get you out the door, want to leave you guys with this.
1, 2, 3.
This is CJ, the Painkiller DeSimone, signing off. We will see you guys when we see you guys. Peace, love, go Jets. Buffalo on deck. Should be interesting. Let's get it.
Let's get it. Woo-woo.
The Jets Factor podcast on the Sports War Radio Network is brought to you by StatementGames.com. Want to take your fantasy game to the next level? Then make your statement. The Jets Factor has weekly tournaments during the NFL regular season that you, the fan, can join in on to win some really cool swag. Go to StatementGames.com and create an account today. It costs you nada, zippo, nothing. And you're ready to join on any one of dozens of tournaments going on in all major sports. So are you ready to make your statement? If so, go to StatementGames.com. Again, that's StatementGames.com.